About to leave, already packing. Come with me, I'm not really asking. We'll get away to a place where we don't know. About to see the world in action, what we can be, life with no distractions. We'll get away, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out. Die with my own doubts. Be free with me. Let's go, let's be free with me. Be free. Not looking back, eyes on the freeway, Bonnie and Clyde, a classic cliche. We're on the run, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out. Die with my own doubts. Be free.
Good morning. It's 10:30, which is very early for A-level economics students, I know. But welcome. It's Jim here at TutorTube to welcome to our 20th. Can you get that? Our 20th live A-level economics revision blast for this summer. And I'm joined, looking at the screen here, we've got Isabel bottom left, Penny top right, and Holly bottom right to guide us through a key topic: ADA, ADAS, aggregate demand, aggregate supply. And if you've not been to one of these sessions before, a particularly warm welcome. And of course, particularly for our live audience, looking at the screen here, lots and lots of students logging in as we speak. If you're watching on replay or on demand, welcome as well. You get the chance to pause the video if you wish to give yourself a bit more time. Whereas the live attendees are under quite a bit of time pressure today because there are some challenging activities and a lot of them will be under time pressure. Who wants to give me a quick overview as to what we're going to cover? Isabel, do you want to sort of lead us off with just a quick snapshot of what this session's all about?
So we've got aggregate demand and aggregate supply, which are really, really fundamental concepts. And they're concepts that you might think, oh yeah, that's easy. I know all about that. I don't need to revise that. But there are so many details involved that it's really, really important that you get those real details. And that's what we're going to test today. If you haven't been to a session this week, there are some new games this week, some new activities. Sorry. Yeah, so that should be pretty exciting. Some real good bits to look forward to.
Brilliant. Well, we'll make a start and enjoy. I'll have a go at the questions as well. Here we go.
So we're starting with my favourite game, which is Altered Vowels. And in true tutor-to-you style, I believe that I've got to try and read them out loud. And what happens here is that we've taken all the vowels out and then we have swapped them with another vowel and put them back in. So there are vowels there, but they're not the vowels that there should be. And you've got to work out what the phrase is. So let's give this a go. What word related to aggregate demand and aggregate supply is Kini-sane? There we go. Let's go for that one. Kini-sane. What do you think? So type your answers in the chat for us, please. If once you know that one is, type your answer in the chat. So take the vowels out, switch them for another vowel, and see what you got. We've got people coming through. We've got Jessica on Keynesian. We've got Ben with Keynesian. Ben, long time viewer. We've got Arshad. We've got Phoebe. We've got Mia. We've got loads of people here. That is definitely true Keynesian. However, that was an easy one. Let's have a look at the next one. Now, I'm thinking that this one should be okay for you. Clue secool. Jeff went for a laugher curve on the last one, which I'm not quite sure where he's going with that one, but clue secool. And who's first in this time? And it is Ben, closely followed by Jessica. So they're 1-1 so far on first people to answer. Mine was also going for classical. Yes, indeed, that is the answer. Okay, we're ramping it up. We're ramping it up for the next one. East Ruin sounds like a castle in Bulgaria, doesn't it? East Ruin. What do you think? Tom, nice to have you with us today. East Ruin. What word related to aggregate demand and aggregate supply is East Ruin? What have we got? Who's going to be first on this one? East Ruin. Take the vowels out, swap them for different vowels, and them back in. What word related to aggregate demand and aggregate supply have you got here? Oh, it is. This one is a bit harder, isn't it? What do we think? East Ruin. And it's Ben this time, 2-1 to Ben. It is indeed Austrian, the Austrian school of thinking. Okay, and then next up, we've got Minotourist, or Minotourist. Very, very small tourists. They're only very, very small. Oh, and Thomas is the first one on this one. Thomas has gone for monetarist. Any other advances on monetarist? Does anyone think it might be something different to monetarist? Phoebe's gone for monetarist too. Jessica's gone for monetarist. Lizzie's going for monetarist. They're all saying monetarist. It is indeed monetarist. So after a great start there, I think I'm going to hand over to Penny.
Hi, thank you very much. Yes, we're going to have a look at some multiple choice questions now. And this is where we start really drilling down into the details of aggregate demand and aggregate supply. So here's your first question. Which of the following best describes the macroeconomic concept of aggregate demand? So how good are your definitions? Have a quick look through, decide whether you think it's A, B, C, or D, and start typing them into the chat room. And Valentin's first person up there today. Oh, 2 different answers. Always good to see a bit of competition with different answers coming up. Okay. Anyone else want to have a go at this one? A, B, C, or D? Nobody fancies D yet, but we've got most people probably going for A. Jim, could we have a look at the correct answer, please? And it is A, so well done if you got that. So the correct full definition should be total spending on goods and services in an economy over a period of time at a given price level. That's very precise, and you need to be careful in economics to be precise in your answers. So let's just have a quick look at the other options. B says total demand in an economy over a period of time. That's a bit too vague, just saying total demand. And also there's no reference there to the price level. Likewise, C and D also don't refer to the price level. C talks about the total amount of goods and services demanded. No, we're looking at the total spending on those goods and services, not the number of them. And finally, D looks at the sum of individual consumer demand, and that's not correct. There is more to it than that in aggregate demand. So let's have a look on that note at the second question, please. So what is the definition of aggregate demand in terms of the formula? What's the correct formula here for aggregate demand in an open economy? A, B, C, or D? Oh, lots and lots and lots of people suddenly jumping in with D. Let's have a look at the right answer and see if that's correct. You are, of course, you're correct. It's C plus I plus G plus brackets X minus M. Well done. Okay, so good to see that you've got that one clear. And of course, we know that S and T are not part of this calculation or part of this formula. They're part of the circular flow. Okay, so we're moving on now from aggregate demand to aggregate supply in question 3. So other things remaining the same, or ceteris paribus, a rise in the minimum wage will result in which of those shifts? Which of the shifts that are given there in A, B, C, or D would be the correct answer as a result of a rise in the minimum wage? So who's first here? Mina, I think, was in there first, then Jessica, and then Thomas, and then we've got lots of other people, again, all coming in with the same answer. Can't see any variation yet. Lizzie is asking about the LRAS. We'll have a look at that in just a second. Okay, I mean, everybody I can see is going for B, so let's look at the correct answer, and it is B. Well done. Okay, so the short run aggregate supply, because it's costing more to produce the goods or services. So the minimum wage will mean that the costs of production have gone up. And the costs of production are the factors that determine the position of the short run aggregate supply curve. So it's got to be either B or D, and it's got to be B because the minimum wage raises the cost of production. So we're going to have an inward shift or a leftward shift of the short run aggregate supply curve. Okay, and that then leads us neatly on to the next question as well, and this one is about the long run aggregate supply curve. So think about what's the long run aggregate supply curve. First of all, if it shifts inwards, what happens to the equilibrium points on the ADAS graph? A, B, C, or D. You might want to just draw yourself a quick sketch of the diagram and see what happens. It's always a good idea with questions that involve shifts. If you're not immediately sure, then quickly sketch it in. Okay, there we go. Everybody so far going for the same answer. I think Mina was first again. Ben was just pipped to it, just second in there. And again, can we look at the correct answer, please, Jim? And it is A. Good. So can anybody now tell me, bonus point, if you can tell me, what are the factors which cause the long run aggregate supply curve to shift? We said for short run that it was the cost of production. What are the factors that cause the long run aggregate supply curve to shift either inwards or outwards, leftwards or rightwards? Okay, Will has said quality and quantity of factors of production, and Valentine's coming up with the same answer as well. Well done. Yes, we're looking at the factors of production. So remember those factors of production: land, labour, capital and enterprise. Any change in either the quantity or the quality of those will shift the long run aggregate supply curve. Great, thank you very much. Let's go on to the next questions now, and I think Holly's going to take you through these.
Fantastic. Thank you very, very much. So we're on to the bubble quiz, which is my favorite type of question. It's kind of the fancier, slightly more challenging cousin of the multiple choice question. So you'll be shown a question, and instead of knowing, oh, I've only got to find one correct answer, the number of correct answers can range from 0 to all 4 or anywhere in between. So Jim, can we see the first question, please? So this links really, really nicely to what Penny was just talking about. So it says, our question is, the position of an economy's LRAS curve, our long run aggregate supply curve, could be determined by what? So type the letters you think are correct in the chat. Remember, none can be correct, all 4 of them can be correct, or maybe just 1, 2, or 3. So we've got a couple of answers coming in. We've got B and D coming in. Lots and lots of people saying B and D. Will's gone A as well, saying the rate of investment is coming in as well. So we've got a few more A, B, D. Nobody seems to think it's C. Oh, Lizzie's come in with C as well. So we've got all 4 of them as a possibility as well. We'll give it a few more seconds before we have our answers revealed by Jim. So we've got lots of A, B, D, seems to kind of be our pretty much our most common answer so far. Oh, sorry, Lizzie. You didn't mean C, that is fine. Jim, can we reveal our answer, please? So our correct answers are A, B, and D. So as Penny said earlier, so we're talking about kind of the quality and quantity of our facts of production. Capital, entrepreneurship, land and labor spells out sell as kind of a quick, easy way to remember it. So we've got our rate of investment. This is really important, talking about kind of the budget, which happened in March, talking about the super deduction that Rishi Sunak was talking about, a tax break where companies can get 25p off their tax bill for every pound of investment. That would help shift the LRAS curve. And we've got productivity, so that's output per worker per hour. And actually, this was the stat of the decade from the Royal Statistical Society. So the average UK productivity growth was just 0.3% 2010 to 2020. So something that we're not necessarily doing too well on in the UK at the moment. And they've got new technology, potentially increasing the quality of our capital, again, shifting out our LRAS curve. And imports of consumer goods, answer C, more to do with aggregate demand less than necessarily with LRAS. So on to question number 2, please, Jim. So we've got question number 2. So which of these factors is likely to lead to an increase in government spending? Which of these factors is likely to lead to an increase in government spending? So type your answer in the chat. Remember, it can be 1, it can be 4. There can actually be no correct answers for this question. So we've seen government spending before today as a component of aggregate demand, where AD equals C plus I plus G plus X minus M. So a really kind of important concept to get to grips with. So we've got lots of answers flooding in. We've got A, we've got D, A and D, A, B, D, lots and lots of answers coming in. A and D being pretty common, lots of C's, a couple of B's coming up as well. And for a bonus point, can anybody come up with a technical name for what's happening in D? What's the technical name that describes 2 quarters of negative economic growth? So if you've got your answers, what is the technical name for D? And we've got it already. Lots of people saying D is describing a recession. Really, really well done. Okay, so Jim, can we have our answers, please? Back to the question we're focusing on. So we've got A and D as leading to an increase in government spending. So we've got our state retirement age being lowered. And so this would kind of necessitate more government spending on pensions and kind of welfare for elderly people. And we've got D as well. So you're correctly identified this as a recession. And I think Ben mentioned kind of automatic stabilizers would need to increase if we were in a recession. So kind of stuff like increased spending on welfare, if unemployment goes up, potentially more government spending necessitated there. B, not likely to really impact our government spending too much. And C, an additional tax threshold is lowered. So the government will be getting less revenue perhaps, but they wouldn't necessitate kind of more government spending. If they've got less tax, we don't know what they're going to do with their government spending. They could reduce it, they could increase it. We just don't know. We don't have enough information there. And fantastic. On to question number 3, please, Jim. Okay, so question number 3, which of these will affect levels of consumer spending? Again, consumer spending, super, super important. We saw it again as part of aggregate demand, and it's really, really key. We're kind of on top of our consumer spending because it can actually contribute 60% of our total aggregate demand. So quite a big one to know what impacts it. And we've got lots of answers running into the chat. So we've got A, B, and D kind of coming up as pretty common. And we've got A, B, C, and D. People think it's all 4 of them. So which of these will impact our levels of consumer spending? A few more seconds. We've got lots and lots of answers. And Jim, can we reveal our answers, please? So for those of you who put 4, well done, it is all 4 of them impacting our consumer spending. So you've got interest rates. This will influence kind of reward to borrowers, cost to savers. Do you want to save? Do you want to spend? Influenced by interest rates. Then we've got our wealth effect. So a positive wealth effect is where asset prices go up. Consumers feel more confident. They feel happier. And so they spend more. Then we've got our consumer confidence, which has actually reached the highest level since the start of the pandemic in the past couple of weeks. So people are feeling more confident, likely to lead to more consumer spending. And then we've got our size of the multiplier. So we're talking about this Keynesian idea where initial increases in national income are multiplied so that the final change in national income is even greater than this initial kind of change in national income. And then finally, we've got our income tax rates. And remember, income taxes are banded. So you've got your personal allowance, then you're taxed at 20%, 40%, and 45% for any income you get over £150,000. And if you've got a higher rate of income tax, you'll have less disposable income and so will be consuming less. So obviously really important for determining your level of consumer spending. So superb work, everybody. And I think we're over to Isabel for some diagram multiple choice questions.
Yes, we had a rare beast there. All 4 answers on the bubble quiz. All 4 answers correct. You don't see that very often. So some more multiple choice questions here. Just one answer correct on these one. Only one answer is correct. So in the first question, we've got the Keynesian version of the AS curve has 3 distinct sections. It is based on all of the following assumptions except. So read the assumptions. Which one isn't right? Assumptions are incredibly important to models, and much of the debate between different schools of thought is around which assumptions are correct for the AS curve and which assumptions are more realistic. So have a read, go through carefully which one isn't correct. Remember, there's only one answer that's correct this time. There's only one answer that's correct, but which one is it? Type your answer into the chat. We've had a BD, we've had a C, we've had a D, we've had a B, we've had a C. What else have we got coming through here? We've got a Leah answering. We've got Shamika answering. Phoebe's gone as well. Bit of a trend for C's here. Let's give it a bit longer, see what we think. Yeah, much harder questions here. I agree, Jeff. Much, much harder. Okay, so we've got a couple of B's, but majority C's. I'll give you just a couple more sections because there's quite a lot to read on this one. Yeah, really important for assessments to really understand what's going on here. Okay, let's have the answer then. It is in, of course, C, because at full employment, almost by definition, we don't have any spare capacity. All of the labour or all of our resources are being used. A couple of words here that a couple of terms that you might not have come across, you might need a bit of a reminder on. So we've got the sticky in a downwards direction. That's generally because workers are very happy to accept pay rises, but we're very averse to pay cuts. It's very difficult, particularly in this country, to have pay cuts. So they tend to be much rarer, or at least real pay cuts. It might be that that compared to inflation, you're actually earning less, but it's very, very unlikely to have the numbers actually going down. Spare capacity in this case means just that there's plenty of room to expand production without increasing the price level. Whereas at productive potential, that's mentioned in D, there's no way for us to increase our output regardless of what the price level is. Okay, let's have a look at the next question then. So this diagram this time shows a movement along the aggregate demand curve from point A to point B. The movement along AD is caused by which one of the following? Really fundamental here, really, really fundamental. So make sure you have a really good look at this. Okay, so having a look at the diagram, which is the right answer here? Why do we move from point A to point B? Oh, we've got loads coming through all at once. Very, very confident there on A. Samran was the first in there, quickly followed by Lizzie and Valentin. So lots of people saying A, very confident on this. Let's have a look. It is indeed A, and this is back to basics in the same way that in micro, a fall in price causes an extension in demand, so we slide down the demand curve. When there's a fall in the general price level, we slide down the aggregate demand curve, and we move to a point where real national income is larger. Or you might want to think about the causal relationship being the other way there as well. Why not B, an increase in government spending? Well, an increase in government spending changes the conditions of demand, but almost changing the assumptions that we've got. So that would lead to a shift outwards of the demand curve. We're not moving to a different point on the demand curve. We'd be moving to a whole new demand curve because our assumptions are changing. When we draw a demand curve, we assume, ceteris paribus, we assume that lots of conditions are going to stay the same. And one of those is government spending. Okay, let's have a look at the next one there. But that was a good question from Will there. And finally, finally. So the distance between Y1 to YF in this diagram refers to, is it the inflationary gap or positive output gap? Is it a deflationary gap or negative output gap? Is it an output deficit or is it a budget deficit? Yeah, tricky one here. Some of my favorite topics in this bit. I really, really like this topic. I'm not going to say which topic it is because it'll give the game away. So Will came in quickly on A this time. Samran went for B. Rebecca went for A. Thomas has gone for A. Our 2004_1 has gone for A. We've got loads of A's coming here with a smattering of B's. Okay, let's have a look at the answer to this one then. Let's have a look at the answer. Yeah, it is indeed A. So Jill was right. It was right. It was right. It was right. So YF is our full employment level of national output. But in the classical model, we can produce a point beyond that in the short term, for example, through overtime, all those sorts of things. But that isn't sustainable in the long run. So we have a positive output gap because we're producing beyond our full employment level of output. However, as we can see, this raises prices. So we might also call this an inflationary gap. So inflationary gap and positive output gap are actually the same thing. And I think I'm passing over here to Penny.
Thanks very much indeed, Isabel. Yes, we're going on to look at one of the two new activities in these revision blasts that Isabel mentioned in the introduction. And this is looking at your chains of analysis. So we're kind of really digging deep into your exam skills here. We're not just thinking about knowledge, but we're working on to analysis, because this is such a key aspect of the mark scheme for all of the exam boards, having that logical chain of reasoning to develop your analysis and your evaluation. So we're going to look at some practice. And here you've got 6 different sentences, which could be part of a chain of analysis about something to do with analysis, with aggregate demand and aggregate supply. So your job here is to read through all 6 of those. And what I suggest you do is try and work out which is the one that you think comes first, that introduces this sort of paragraph point, and then look for the one that you think comes last, that concludes it, and then try and arrange all of the others in between into the most logical order in between them. And I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to think about this, because you need to read through, work out the correct order. When you think you've got the order, type it into the chat. Just type the numbers in. So Jeff's wondering if he's worked out which is the first one. What do you think, the rest of you? Are you going to go with 3 as the first introductory sentence in this paragraph? Oh, Didier's come in with a very quick response there. Does look as if we're favouring 3 as the first one, doesn't it? Okay, once you think you've got your numbers, just check it, just sort of read it through in your head and make sure that it does make sense to you. I can see people who are getting close to what we've got as the sort of ideal logical answer here, but I haven't seen anyone coming up with exactly what I'm going to give you in a minute, but I think you're near enough. Let's just give you another few seconds to look through it, because this does take some reading and thinking about. Okay, we seem pretty convinced, don't we, that 3 is where we're starting, but there's lots, and I think pretty much everybody has come up with a different order since then. So let's, please, Jim, have a look at the suggested order that we have for you here. There we go, it's rearranged itself. So the order that we have to suggest to you here is 3, 2, 1, 4, 6, 5. Let's just take a run through those and think about why that's the case. So 3 is obviously introducing the answer. By stating, and if some of you have come across this idea of having a one-line answer, that introduces the answer to the question. And then with number 2, what we're going on is giving some explanation of what will happen as a result of the injections, such as government spending. Nice to have the example in there. And then 2 is looking at, okay, what will that lead on to? So it says it could lead to a greater than proportional increase in real GDP if the economy has a positive multiplier effect. And that's also quite a nice sentence because it uses those phrases which are hedging the answer. It says it could lead to if the economy has a positive multiplier effect. It's not saying it definitely, absolutely will have that effect. And that's very important in economics. We can seldom have an answer in which, regardless of what else happens, regardless of anything else, there's a definite response to a change. So then we go on from that to number 1, saying this is because injections of new demand for goods and services into the circular flow of income stimulate further rounds of spending as a result of higher wages and factor income. So that's explaining further or analysing the effects of the injection. And again, that uses some very nice connective phrases with this is because and as a result. And then 4 introduces an example. So we've got some application going in here as well. So for example, if the government invested 100 million in building new houses, now we're explaining this multiplier effect that the wages and profits of construction workers and firms would increase, which may result in them spending more in the economy. So again, using connectives to build up the logical chain of reasoning. And then we're going to conclude that point by saying this spending would then cause the AD curve to shift even further rightwards, having greater impact on national output and total employment in the economy than the original injection would have caused alone. And hopefully you might also have drawn a diagram to show those 2 succeeding shifts of aggregate demand. And then of course 5 is giving some introduction to evaluation, isn't it? So there we've got the size of this impact on overall real GDP will depend on, such a useful phrase when you're evaluating, will depend on the size of the multiplier effect, which will itself be impacted by consumers' marginal propensities to consume, save and import. So I'm sure you've gone back and already done some revision of your formula that you use for calculating the marginal propensity to consume and the marginal propensity to save, but there's some help on that for you. Okay, so thank you for your work on that. Let's hand you on now to Holly for your next activity.
Fantastic, thank you very much. So what we're going to do is work out the 4 groups of phrases here. So we've got lots and lots of kind of things. What I want you to do is group them into 4 groups of 4. So have a read, have a little bit of a think, type in your groups of 4 to the chat as soon as you've got them. So we've got northern infrastructure pipelines, we've got change in oil prices. Oil prices actually kind of recovering quite quickly from kind of the big fall we saw, around kind of $63 a barrel at the moment. So we've got HS2, big kind of big rail project, Crossrail as well. Clue is in the name, again, another rail project. So let's see some kind of discussions about what we think our 4 groups of 4 could be. Any ideas, anyone? So you've got Mia kind of saying changes in oil prices. What could that go with? So a bit of a tough question here. Let's see if we can have a go, have a guess. Doesn't matter if you get it wrong. That's all part of the revision process. Trying to find some links between these 16 different options. Okay. Okay, so Charlotte's come up with an answer, and Louis as well come up with a very, very similar answer. Great work there. So we've got HS2, Crossrail, the Northern Infrastructure Pipeline, and Birmingham's Big City Plan, all identified as one group. And Thomas has kind of come out correctly and said, look, these are all infrastructure projects. That's great for kind of one possible group. And we've got another one as well. So kind of changes in taxes, changes to the minimum wage, which was again kind of adjusted in the 2021 budget as well, which has gone up. So if you're under 18, which I think probably if you're doing your A-levels, most of you are, you would be earning £4.30 an hour if you were getting your national minimum wage. So we've got maybe some of them are changes to SRAS, changes in prices, changes in taxes. Yeah, lots of people coming up with the all affecting AS. So Jim, can we have our first group revealed, please? So no one has actually got this group so far, so I think it's a good one to kind of start with. So these are all factors that impact exports and imports. So part of our big aggregate demand equation. So we've got non-priority factors. This is kind of the quality of, or new technology, so the quality of exports and imports. We've got degrees of protectionism. So these are things that kind of prevent free trade. So kind of tariffs, quotas, all of that kind of stuff. We saw it a lot in America when Trump was in power. Then we've got changes in incomes of trading partners. So this kind of links really nicely with your income elasticity of demand. So if your income of your trading partner goes up, are they going to demand kind of more goods from you? What if they have a recession? Are they maybe going to demand less exports from a country? Then the next, our final one here is exchange rates. So the way I like to think about exchange rates is if you've got an appreciation, the mnemonic, I remember it with buy is spicy. So strong pound, imports cheap, exports expensive. So if you have an appreciation, you've got a strong pound, your imports are really, really cheap. So you're going to import more and your exports are expensive. So you will obviously export less. So exchange rates are a really key one impacting your exports and imports. So we're going to give you another minute to see if anyone can come up with another group. So we've got our first group. Can we think of any more? So Charlotte's come up with something that could impact investment. So we've got business confidence, government regulations, interest rates, risk. We've got some more kind of groups coming up as well. Mia's come up with a similar one to Charlotte, talking about levels of investment. Any more groups that anybody can see here after we've eliminated 4 of them for you? So linked risk, natural disasters, interest rate. We've got business confidence kind of coming up a lot as a big one. We'll give it 2 more seconds and then we'll ask Jim to reveal some more answers. Okay, Jim, can you reveal our next group for us, please? So lots of people coming up with this one, factors that are shifting short run aggregate supply. So remember, as we talked about earlier, this is changes in the cost of factors of production. So changes in the minimum wage, obviously kind of the cost of the factor of production there is labor. Changes in the oil price, super important for producing lots of things. So we'll have a big shift on SRS. Changes in taxes as well, shifting our short run aggregate supply curve and natural disasters. This one kind of works through the medium of scarcity. So our resources become more scarce after a natural disaster, leading to a rise in prices for our factors of production. And I think lots of people have got this one already. So can we have our second group, please, Jim? Oh, sorry, our third group. So our third group are factors influencing the levels of investment. Lots of people got this one, super well done. So first of all, we've got government regulations, subsidies, again, linking back to kind of that super deduction from the March budget where you can get 25% off your tax for every pound a company invests. So kind of a really big idea to promote investment there. Then we've got business confidence, kind of animal spirits, again linking to Keynes, and this is actually likely to rise kind of following the lifting of lockdown. Lots and lots of refurbishment going on ahead of kind of opening up on April the 12th. Again, lots of investment businesses feeling pretty confident. And then risk, kind of intuitively, if it's risky, firms don't want to do it, they don't want to invest. And then we've got interest rates as well. So our cost to borrowers, reward to savers. If it's a really, really high interest rate, it's super expensive to borrow. So maybe firms wouldn't want to borrow as much to influence, and that would influence the level of their investment. So we have got Crossrail, Birmingham's Big City Plan, HS2, and the Northern Infrastructure Pipeline. What links these? Just type it in the chat. What's linking our last 4 things? I think a couple of people have said it already, but if you haven't, just have a think. What links HS2, Crossrail, Birmingham's Big City Plan, and the Northern Infrastructure Pipeline? Any ideas, anyone? What can link these 4 things? Yeah, good. So we've got lots of answers coming in now. So we've got government spending and policies to increase LRES, which is the correct answer. So Northern Infrastructure Pipeline, that's part of kind of Build Back Better. So this is kind of transport in the north, HS2 Crossrail, big kind of railway projects that have been going for a couple of years now, and Birmingham's Big City Plan, which is redoing the city centre of Birmingham and kind of building more cycling routes as part of that as well. And so these will all hopefully lead to LRES shifting to the right, increasing the quality and quantity of facts of production, part of supply side policies, and we're right, expansionary fiscal policies as well. So superb work, everybody, and over to Penny.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to have a look at another of the new games that we've introduced this week. And again, this one is looking at evaluation. So now we're looking at AO4, another of the exam skills. And I know lots of you are really working hard on practicing writing out essays and planning essays for your assessments that are coming up. So let's have a good go at how we might evaluate something. So the evalu wheel that we've got running on the right-hand side of the screen here is giving you half a dozen or so phrases that might be used to introduce and to build your evaluation of a key point that you've made. So we're going to put up for you a line of an argument that a student's written. Here it is. It's an increase in consumption caused by higher consumer confidence due to the UK's COVID-19 vaccine rollout will result in AD shifting rightwards, leading to an increase in output and inflation. And surely there would be a diagram showing that outward shift of AD and the impact of it as well. What you need to do is see if you can think of how you would evaluate that point. So just have a look and a quick think about it before we move on. And then we'll start the evalu wheel now. So it's going to start running and it's going to fix on at random on one of those key phrases. It's going for however. There you go. So what possible negative view or evaluative view could you give of that argument, starting with the word however? Okay, once you think you've got some ideas, why don't you just type in a brief summary of what your argument, your evaluative argument would be, starting with the word however. And Thomas has come up with one first. Okay, that's a good start. Thank you, Thomas. Any other ideas? There's lots of different ways that you could take the line of evaluation here. So Thomas is looking at the size of the multiplier. Lewis is looking at something else. Okay, he's looking at the impact on inflation. Didier's got another view. Okay, we've got demand pull inflation there again. Charlotte's looking at position against the long run aggregate supply curve, whether we're working at full capacity. Lots of other ideas coming through. Could we please, Jim, put up the suggestion that we have? There's nothing wrong with actually with any of the arguments that I think that I can see coming up in the chat line there. What we're suggesting here is about that position on the aggregate supply curve, referring specifically to the Keynesian aggregate supply curve. So we're saying, however, if the economy is already operating near its productive capacity, and you assume the economy's aggregate supply curve is Keynesian in nature, So again, you could draw that. An increase in aggregate demand will have little effect on output and will mainly result in an increase in the price level. There are lots of other suggestions that lots of you are coming up with, which are very well written and are coming up with other good relevant ideas. But you can use whichever of those you think best suits your argument at the time. Okay, so let's now take you into the last stage of today's quiz with Isabel.
Oh, thank you very much. Those bubble sound effects can mean only one thing. It is indeed time for red herring. So we'll give you 4 fish. 3 of them have something in common. Your job is to find the odd one out. And for a bonus point, identify the link between the other 3. So let's have a look at the first question then. Oh, those bubble sounds. Very atmospheric. So, depending on your example, you might actually not have come across all of these before, but you should know enough to be able to work out the link anyway. So, just as a quick explainer, just like you probably know that marginal propensity to consume is the proportion of additional income that's spent on consumption, marginal propensity to save is the proportion of additional income of an additional unit of income that would be saved. So that kind of makes sense. And it's the same with B and D. You can kind of apply the same stuff. Oh, we've got loads of Bs coming in here. Lizzie, straight off the bat with B. Mine straight off the bat with B. Ramendra, I hope that I'm pronouncing it right, has gone for B. We've got all Bs here. But Thomas is the first one that has given us an explanation. Ben's given another explanation. We've got some slightly different explanations coming here. Clearly, this is perhaps a bit of a tricky topic for us. Vanessa's said that A, B, and D are leakages. And Kiza, I hope I'm pronouncing that one right, is saying that C isn't withdrawal. Let's have a look at the answers here, because it seems like we all agree that it's... Oh, we've had loads of people on B here, but the answer is, in fact, C. And the reason for that is that savings and taxes and imports are all withdrawals. And that's what I think, I can't remember who said it, but someone did mention that they're all leakages. They're all withdrawals. So because of that, the marginal propensity to save, the marginal propensity to tax, and the marginal propensity to import are all components of the marginal propensity to withdraw. So they all kind of come under the umbrella of withdrawals from the economy. And if you add the values of those 3 grey fish together, you should get the marginal propensity to withdraw. And if you add that to the red one, then you should get 1. So all of those are linked to withdrawals, and therefore they're all parts of the marginal propensity to withdraw. So lots of people coming straight off there, but actually our right answer didn't come till a little bit further down. Let's have a look at the next question. What links these 3 fish, and which is the odd one out? What links them, and which one is the odd one out? So we've got occurs in a boom, spare capacity exists, beyond the PPF, and upward pressure on inflation. We're a little bit slower off it this time. I think we're perhaps a bit nervous. Mine's gone for B. Didier's gone for B. Jotara's gone for B. Jessica's gone for B. Oh, so again, we're very pro B at the minute. Let's have a look. No, we don't want our answers yet. Sorry, I want to have a look at your answers, is what I'm talking. Oh, there we go. There we go. So it is indeed B. We were right off on that. The only answer I can see given is that is Rebecca and perhaps Ben as well, saying that the others are all related to the positive output gap. And actually, there are loads of ways that you could have phrased your answer here. They're all features of positive output gap, and that's because spare capacity is associated with a negative output gap. So that's why we have that. That's why that one is the odd one out. If we've got spare capacity, we're likely to be producing at a point inside the PPF, not beyond the PPF. It's likely to be in a recession, not a boom. And there isn't going to be much pressure on inflation in those situations either. And that's why that one is the odd one out. And actually, we've got a couple of people coming up afterwards, just kind of reinforcing that they are indeed all linked to positive output gaps. I love output gaps as a topic because it brings in these other about the macroeconomy. Okay, over to Holly for the short straw.
Fantastic, thank you very much. So what the aim of the game here is not to draw the short straw. So you're going to see a question with 4 possible answers that can be ranked. Your task is to choose the 3rd ranking item. Okay, and then you'll get points kind of whether you get high or low. So which component of aggregate demand was the third largest in the UK in 2020? Was it investment, government spending, the net trade balance, or consumption? So we're going to go super quickly, have a guess, think about what you know. Which component of AD was the third largest in the UK in 2020? Investment, government spending, the net trade balance, or consumption? So we've got loads of people kind of jumping in on the chat to say investment is our third largest component of AD. Lots and lots of investments coming up. Jim, can we have the answer, please? So well done to those of you who got it right. We have investment as our third largest with 18%. So give yourself 4 points if you got investment. 2 points if you got government spending. It's our second largest at 23%. Our net trade balance, unfortunately, you've drawn the short straw. You get 0. It's 1% of aggregate demand. And consumption, 1 point, because it's the largest proportion of AD at 58%. So write down your number and on we go to the second short straw question, please. Fantastic. So which country has the third highest level of investment as a percentage of GDP in 2019? So not this year, not the year before that, but the year before that. Is it Argentina, the UK, France, or Kenya? So which of these 4 countries has the third highest level of investment as a percentage of GDP? So we've got some answers coming in the chat. People saying Kenya, we've got Rebecca with France, we've got Argentina, we've got France. Nobody's thinking it's the UK. Apparently we're not going to be the third highest level of investment. Lots of Argentina, lots of France. Give it a few more seconds. Lots of France coming up again. Kenya again. Can we have our answer, please? So unfortunately, Argentina would have scored you no points, whereas UK is actually the third highest level of investment, so nobody gets our full 4 points here. So UK's got 17.24% of its GDP as investment. Kenya has got 18.96%, which scored you 2 points, and France actually has the highest level of investment as a percentage of its GDP with 22.57%, and that would have scored you 1 point. So 8 points up for grabs here. Hopefully some of you got 8, but I think we may have seen a few zeros as well. So well done. And on to our last activity for the day. So here we are with our higher or lower. And in Tutor to You fashion, we are going to have the presenters versus our pupils, our students on our live broadcast. So Isabel and Penny, are you ready for higher or lower?
Yep. Ready as I'll ever be.
Fantastic. So our question today is the next country's savings rate, again, done as a percentage of GDP, higher or lower than the previous country? So we've got Germany at 10.1% for its savings rate, and we've got the US as our next country. So students, have a go. Do we think it's going to be higher or lower than Germany at 10.1%? I'm going to go over to Penny. What do you think? Do you think it has a higher or lower savings rate than Germany?
Putting me on the spot, Holly. I reckon it's probably lower.
Okay, so we've got lower from our presenters in the studio. Lots of people coming in with lower, higher, bit of a mix for the students here. And Isabel, what do you think? Does the US have a higher or lower savings rate than Germany?
I think I'm going to go lower as well. Yeah, I'm going to go lower.
Okay, so we've got a split divide for our presenters and a pretty much kind of a split divide for our students as well. Can we have the answer, please? So we've got 2.6, so it's miles lower than Germany's of 10.1%, so much, much lower. And our next country is Costa Rica. So do we think Costa Rica has a higher or lower savings rate than the US? Remember, the US had 2.6. Do you think it's higher or lower? So have a couple of seconds to put it in the chat. Will's come straight away saying, look, I think it's going to be higher. Lots and lots of people saying higher. Pretty strong consensus from the students. Isabel, do you agree with the students, or are you going to go for lower?
I trust our students. I trust the students on the chat today. I am going to go for higher, just like them.
Okay, so we've got Isabel kind of coming in with higher as well. Penny, your thoughts, higher or lower?
Yeah, it's tempting to go with the students. They've come up with such good answers throughout, haven't they? 2.6 is very low in the US. So Costa Rica, you think that there's a good chance it'll be higher?
Yep, okay, so we've got consensus coming from our presenters as well, kind of the majority in the chat saying higher. So can we have our answer, please? And again, well done, everyone. It is higher at 8.4%. Okay, our next country, South Korea. Do we think it has a higher or lower savings rate than Costa Rica? So type your answers into the chat, higher or lower than 8.4%. Okay, lots coming through, kind of a mixture here with lower and higher. Penny, do you think it's higher or lower?
I get to take a bit of a punt, but I reckon it's higher. Yes, I'm going for higher.
Okay, so we think it's higher from Penny, kind of more savings in South Korea than Costa Rica. We may have influenced the chat here. We've got lots of hires coming in just now. And what about you as well, higher or lower?
Oh, I don't know about this one, because I know that South Korea has reasonably high savings rates, but is it higher than 8.4%? Oh, I think maybe just, I'm going to go for smidgen higher.
So a smidgen higher. So we've kind of got higher coming in here. And you are right, but perhaps by a little bit more than a smidgen. It is 15% savings rate in South Korea. So the highest one we've seen all day. Now we come on to the UK. We saw earlier kind of very low productivity. Were we investing that much? Do we think our savings rate is higher or lower than 15%? Rebecca, straight off with lower than 15%. And straight back to you, Isabel, higher or lower?
I'm feeling confident about this one. I would be very surprised if it was higher. I think it's almost certainly going to be lower, and by quite a lot, I reckon.
Okay, so we've got kind of very low coming in from Isabel, echoed by the chat as well. Lots and lots of lowers coming in as well. Penny, do you agree, or do you think it's kind of roguely going to be higher?
No, I think I would go with lower as well.
Okay, so we're pretty much kind of agreed across the board. Lizzie, very confident. Cameron, very confident. Full caps. Answers there, definitely lower. Can we have our answer, please? So it is so much lower at minus 0.8%. So we've actually got a negative number here. So what that means is kind of we're borrowing so much to finance our consumption. We're going through this kind of de-saving. We're spending all of our savings because we are consuming so much in the UK. And that brings us to our end for our higher or lower quiz.
Wow, fantastic. Fast paced, we covered a heck of a lot there. And as Isabel said right at the start, it's a topic area that some students maybe don't spend enough time on, but such a useful series of concepts to apply in your answers. Fantastic stuff. A huge thanks to Isabel, Penny, and Holly for guiding us through that. If you found it useful, as always, please give us a thumbs up on YouTube, including if you're watching on replay, because that helps YouTube suggest this session and these types of sessions to other A-level economics students. Now, next week, we are back in the mornings again, and we have 2 topic mixes. We've got a micro topic mix on Tuesday and a macro topic mix on Thursday, drawing from all the core topics in micro and macro. Fantastic revision sessions just ahead of post-Easter assessments. Hopefully you can join us for those. But for now, we'll see you later. Thank you.